Hello and welcome back. Today, in this lesson, we're looking at writing checks. And this is something that's very important because you at some point are going to have to write checks. For example, if you want to uh, get e-billing or if you want to rent a place, they need a first and last month's check. So at some point, you are going to have to write a check. You have to get checks. So it is very important to know how to fill one out properly, and it's an important skill. So I'm just going to talk about some of the lead-up stuff. So it's a two-part lesson. So the first part here is I want to talk about the parts of the check. Top corner here, this is your check number. So this tells you what check was cashed. So when you look at your bank statement, if you go online, you'll see check 1025 came out. So that check number, so you'll know what number was cashed. This is self-explanatory. This is where you put the date for the check. Here is who's getting the money, so who you are paying. So if it's your landlord, you'll put his name in there. The memo line, this is a note to self, because what can happen when you go on your bank account, when you do a check electronically, you can view the check. There'll be an electronic copy, so it's just looking at a picture. And it's always nice, especially if you get married, to see what the heck the check was for. Because often my wife will write a check and I have no idea what the check was. So she writes in the memo line that, paying for her girls' soccer. So I know exactly what that check was for. So very, very important to put a quick note in there. So you might put in rent. So when you look back, you're like, oh, right, that check was for rent. This is where you got to put your signature. So you need to practice the signature, very important. Okay, I like to make one that you can't read, looks cool. And finally, this little box here is how much. So you write it in numbers. And then this is the tricky part. In here, you have to write out the amount in words. That's what we're going to practice to start with here. The amount in words. So we need to write large amounts of large values. We've got to be able to write it in words as a sentence. So a very interesting challenge here when we're writing checks. So what I have here off to the side right here is how to spell some of the common numbers from 1 to 100. And that's what we're going to work off of. So first of all, we're just going to practice converting numbers to words and words to numbers, and then we'll fill out a couple checks for practice. So on this one, place value review. Remember, we only have to go out 2 places on the decimal. Okay, so I'm going to write on my side. So we have the tenths and the hundredths. All right, hundredths. We only have to go to 2 decimal places with money, so we just need to know that. Go in the other direction, we have our ones, our tens, our hundreds, our thousands, and then 10,000s. And if you're really unlucky and have to write a big check, 100,000s. That's maybe when you buy a house or something though. Okay, so there's your place value review. Same as it was back in grade, 7, 8, so on and so forth. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is translate. We need to translate some words. This will be challenging. So the first 3 examples here, follow me along. I'll highlight what I'm looking at. So the example of the question, which will look like your worksheet, for the following, write each money value as a number. So 3,235. So we have 3,000. So that means we'll have a 3 in the thousands column. So maybe I'll give myself a little bit more space. So this is in the thousands column. I'll just put a little T over it for the first couple. 235. So 235. And that works because we have thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones. All right, now you don't have to put what's in red here. Okay, you're just going to write out $3,235. All right. The next one, 708. So that means we have 700 right. Now 708. So this is what it's going to look like. All right. In my head, when I look at this, I think of it like this. 700 and is usually addition and 8. So 700 plus 8 is the 708. So that's what's going through my head when I look at that particular example. Okay? And you can think of them all that way. If we go back to the previous one, 3,235. Okay? So we do our stacked addition strategy, and we find that that gives you the same answer. So if you're not comfortable just reading it and coming up with the number, this is an excellent strategy until you get better with it. All right? Finally, the last example here, 56,921. So again, I'm going to use this stack strategy just for this. If you can get it right away, that's fine. So there's 56,921. Okay, and your stacked addition. The nice thing with the stacked addition, too, I'll point out, is that you're always adding zeros from above. So it's not too complicated when it comes to actually going through and doing the adding. So 1, 2, 9, 6, 5. Now, if you're able to just look at this and read it and say, oh, that's 56,921, it looks like that, no problem. You do not have to do this little step here. I'm just trying to give people that are having trouble reading and translating, it's a strategy to help you get the right number and do it correct. Okay? One last example is writing it out in words. Okay? So what I always recommend is to write it out in words. We do it in terms of thousands get grouped together. So I'm going to write this out. So the first one is 15,000. And I'll just go comma. Now, how would I say this out loud? So I would call it 438. That's exactly what you write. 438. So break it into small parts and ask yourself, how would I say this out loud? And then that's exactly what you write down. All right? So for the next one, how would I start that one? Well, I know it's in the fourth column, so I know that is a 9,000. So that's what I'll write out first. 9,000, comma. Now, how would I say this out loud? Well, I would say 245. That's exactly what you would write down. 245. And you can reference that sheet from the previous page for the spelling to make sure you get the words right. And that's how that would look. And my last example, how would you say that? So again, 903. So start with the 9, so 903. Okay, so this will be tricky for some. It is a little bit of writing. The worksheet, you're going to have to write out a couple things, but it's all in practicing and getting ready for that check. So keep that in mind. You're not going to do hundreds of these, because I hope you're not writing hundreds of checks all the time that quick or close together. But it is important to get comfortable with this because, excuse me, it's a necessary skill when it comes to real world. All right, so the worksheet, you're going to be doing translating words to numbers, and then you're going to be working on translating numbers to words, and that's stage 1, and we'll finish up the last part of this lesson after you get that worksheet checked by the teacher. So we'll talk to you in a couple minutes.